Hey everyone, welcome. This is Baron, and in this video I'm going to tell you a bit about my Arc Ignite Elementalist build as a sort of introduction or jumping off point to a guide. Call it a sales pitch to see if you want to watch the whole thing, part 0 of the guide. This is a build that can be run at any budget level by a player with any level of experience. As you can see on the screen right now, Arc is a lightning spell that chains between enemies after we cast it. It deals more damage to enemies earlier in the sequence, but continues to spread onward, meaning that it can do well at both clearing mobs quickly and single target damage against tougher enemies if we build it right. And we do build it right with this guide, a clean mix of offense and defense, clear speed and single target. A well-balanced build to tackle all endgame content if you put in the time. This version of the build will be using Arc to inflict what's called an Ignite, basically setting the enemy on fire for a brief period and causing them to take fire damage over time while spreading the flames to nearby enemies, killing more enemies in a single cast. This guide is going to be as comprehensive as possible and cater to all player skill levels, and that means it's going to take 2 branching paths you can choose from. If you've been around the block before in Path of Exile, if you've at least played through the campaign, gotten into the endgame mapping system a couple times, you can go ahead and move right on to part 1 of the main guide. It will still have an approachable, beginner-friendly tone and include information on how to level the build, but I won't bore you with the minutiae that only a beginner would need to hear, focusing instead on how to assemble the endgame version. On the other hand, if this is your first league in Path of Exile, or you have a limited amount of experience, feel free to follow the branch toward the Novice Path instead. That will be a comprehensive walkthrough that doubles as an introduction to the game as a whole. You can always go back and watch the more advanced videos once you've gotten to the endgame mapping system and have a better handle on the build. My goal is to make a full guide that can get a player smoothly from the beginning of Act 1 straight through to endgame maps, even if they've never played the game before, and then, if they want to continue, provide options to advance to more expensive versions of the build, which can do over 30 million damage per second. Now, if you are a very experienced player who doesn't need any video build guide and just wants the Path of Building file and the written notes, I've got those down in the description of this intro video, and you are welcome to them. For everyone else, the guide will branch now. The Novice Path will go through Path of Exile's campaign act by act, offering important information that new players often wish they knew. Along the way, I'll explain game mechanics, tell you which gems to acquire and use, which passive skill points to take, which quests to be sure not to miss, and when to do those things. Earlier sections of the guide will be particularly heavy on those sorts of details to get a new player accustomed to the game. On the other hand, the main guide for established players will be divided up into the traditional sections you would expect from a build guide. First will be a sort of 10,000-foot view of the build, why I chose it, how it works, pros and cons, that kind of thing. After that will come a video about the Ascendancy or subclass choice, along with the passive skill tree setup and the jewels we can socket into that tree. It will cover each progressing skill tree in order from beginning to end. Next and last for the main guide comes the skill gems and gear section, which by necessity is going to have to be its own video because the gear progression is just that detailed. It will cover generic leveling gear, early maps, our first major shakeup with Chaos Inoculation, and then some expensive endgame setups. For now, let's draw this elevator pitch to a close. This build is an all-arounder. It is viable on League Start when you have no currency or gear, but it can also benefit from substantial time and currency investment. It has a good mix of tankiness and damage, single target damage and clear speed, and that will allow you to explore a wide variety of what Path of Exile's endgame has to offer. If that sounds interesting, then this may be the build for you. I hope to see you in part 1 of either the main guide or the novice walkthrough, and in the meantime, please drop any questions in the comments. Thank you for tuning in, and take it easy.